All right, welcome to the Van Gogh Wealth Show, wealth creation for attorneys, advisors, and entrepreneurs, and more, depending on who you are listening to this. Today, we're going to talk about something that I think everybody in business deals with. If you've taken any kind of sales training at all, and if you're in business, you absolutely should and must, then you've probably heard something along the lines of a sales trainer saying something like, these leads suck. That's what the sales guy is saying to the sales manager, right? And the sales manager says, no, you suck. The idea being that if you're a great salesperson, you should be able to take an ice cold lead, take them all the way to red hot sold. And a great salesperson can't do that. It takes a ton of effort, a ton of talent, a lot of time. It's very expensive. And then worse than all that, what happens if you don't have that skill or talent quite yet? All right. Or what happens if you can't hire someone that does have the skill or talent? And what's more likely, what if you don't even know what those skills and talents are in that salesperson? And then just as likely as that, what if you can identify those skills and talents, which is very hard to do? People sometimes just know exactly what to say in the interview, and their performance is often another thing, speaking from experience, from hiring God knows how many people. But what happens if you can't, let's say you get that far, you identify the skills and talents necessary, but now you can't afford them because anybody that knows they have those skills and talents, primarily the skills, by the way, is going to be charging top dollar. And then what happens if you even find that person? First of all, you can't afford it, but what happens if they don't even live close to your business? Well, now you not only are you in a difficult scenario, you're in the most common scenario ever in business. All right. So the truth of the matter is, like, yeah, maybe the leads suck, but and maybe you suck, maybe I suck, maybe everybody sucks, but most likely what's really going on is that your system sucks. That's actually a lot more likely than you sucking or someone else sucking or just being negative about this lead quality. And so we are talking today about lead quality, but another way to say that would be lead psychology, because in my experience, they are one and the same. In fact, lead quality is determined by the psychology of the lead before they speak with you. That's the whole point of this entire video you're watching. So here's the interesting point. Everybody in competition with you has the same leads in your market. So if your leads suck, then so do your competitors, right? Not actually true, but I'll explain to you. It's actually the whole point of this video. This is a really, really helpful quote. Ultimately, a business owner wins by making the same customer more valuable to his business than that of his competitors. That's a Dan Kennedy quote. One of the best things he's ever said. Hear it again, okay? Ultimately, a business owner wins by making the same customer more valuable to his business than that of his competitors. That's ultimately how you win. All right. Now, on the topic of lead quality, lead psychology, I have paraphrased it. It is just as true. Ultimately, a business owner wins by making the same lead more valuable to his business than that of his competitors. All right. So, how do you do that? Well, that's exactly what you're about to discover. All right. So, the secret here, I love putting secrets in air quotes, is it's all about how they feel about you before meeting. All right. That's the psychology part. So, lead quality comes from lead psychology, and how they feel about you or your company or your team before they meet you. That's the psychology, and that determines the lead quality. In fact, it determines the whole thing. I mean, we're going to cover the specific metrics here. And there's only two ways to foolproof change that psychology, all right? And the first one is demonstration. Now, if you're watching this video and you haven't seen the video that I made on demonstration, you got to go watch that. It's one of the highest leverage things you could ever discover in business, period. All right? Demonstration, demonstration, demonstration. And there's only a couple things that you need to be able to demonstrate. And again, all this happens before you ever even talk with, ideally, talk with your prospect, you or your team. First thing is expertise. Gone are the days where you could hang your shingle out and say, I'm in business, and people just assume you know what you're doing. If anything, people know better now that most people don't know what they're doing, even if they're so-called professionals, right? So you have to be able to demonstrate your expertise in one way or another. Ideally, you can also demonstrate some kind of authority. People follow leaders, right? Leaders get followers, right? Well, people follow followers of leaders too. And so if you can demonstrate that you have the authority and that you're leading any group of people, ideally colleagues or peers, then you've demonstrated authority to your prospects as well. All right, social proof kind of falls into the same category of authority. If you can establish authority with one group and your new prospect sees that authority, that's social proof, and they're more likely to follow the followers that you've established as leader. Okay, so the great phrase to remember on social proof is everybody wants to do what everybody's doing and nobody wants to do what nobody's doing, right? That's the end of the story there. In fact, I was walking to a baseball game years ago with my girlfriend at the time, and we came around the back. It was at the stadium here in Denver, and we're walking up. I think it was across like the tracks at Union Station, and I'm looking at the maps, and the entrance is that way. And my girlfriend's like, "Oh, come on, let's go." She's just like literally just following the crowd. I'm looking at the maps. I'm seeing like 200 people walk the wrong way, and I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, sure." But this right here says it's right there. So what happened? 200 people were late. We walked right to the door. People don't even take the time to think for themselves sometimes. So that social proof mechanism is very, very, very strong. Very intelligent people default to that. So social proof is a great thing to demonstrate. And then value in advance. This actually kind of falls into, this is probably at the top. The most helpful thing you can demonstrate to your prospects is that, as Frank calls it, it's the old prove you can help them by actually helping them trick, right? Like the oldest trick in the book. I mean, if you say you can help people, well, they may or may not believe you. But if you prove you can help them by actually helping them, then problem solved. So that's the first of the two things, demonstration, and those are the things to demonstrate. And now my slides are stuck. All right, and the next thing to do or tell, say, are stories. So here's the thing about stories, real quick, before I get into the mechanics of it. I'm going to get into the brain mechanics of it, the physiology of it. So the decision-making center of the brain and the emotional center of the brain, not only are they connected, they're the exact same structure. So the exact same area of the brain lights up with feelings and emotions. They were able to demonstrate this, prove this, with a very small sample size, but with 100% correlation between damage to that area. So if these people weren't able to experience emotion, they were incapable of making decisions, any kind of decisions, insignificant decisions like salt versus pepper, ketchup or mustard. Because they had no feelings about these things, they weren't able to make decisions about them. So how do you take that and use it in business? Well, by creating an emotion, you have in fact now created a decision in one form or the other. The strategy then becomes, what emotions do you create and what decisions do you create? And by the way, that's a purely subconscious process. And even if you're aware of the process, it's what we call a superconscious tool of persuasion, meaning you can be aware of the process, but it still affects you anyway. So even if you're aware of this process, it still affects you anyway. So stories are very, very powerful, right? They're right up there with demonstrations. One of the first things you want to tell a story about is how you're just like them, all right? You got to find a way to relate. This goes to the like, know, trust trifecta. People like people that are like them. They feel like they know people that are like them, and they feel like they trust people that are like them. The more you have in common, the better to share. And there are broad and narrow bonding elements. In fact, I do a whole storytelling workshop on that. I may do that again soon sometime. Next thing you want to do is tell a story that illustrates that you care. Maybe you know you care. I know I care. People know they care, but nobody knows that you care unless you tell them. And telling them may or may not work, but telling a story, demonstrating and illustrating it, that works. Tell a story that you're a good person. Look, I assume that you are. If you're watching this, you're in business. You're trying to grow, trying to be successful for yourself and your family and your community and the people that you serve. I don't know many bad people. I'm pretty much a bad person repellent. Got a radar for that stuff. But you can't just assume everybody thinks you're a good person. They don't know you, right? So you have to really show them, illustrate it in a story. Next thing is a story that shows that you want to help. Like, I think everybody understands that you're not in business typically as a pure charity. But everybody also understands, even though they may not articulate it this way, the only way to be in business is to provide a value that exceeds the cost you charge. Okay, well, that's all good and well, right? The only way that you can do that is if you genuinely want to help somebody. There's only one way to make money in business, and that's to provide more value than the cost, right? Period. If you provide less value than what you charge, word gets out, the inferior product always loses, and you're not in business anymore, right? So you got to be able to tell a story that demonstrates that you really do want to help. Everybody understands you have to get paid for that, but you have to lead with helping, otherwise you ain't getting paid. It's helpful also to tell a story illustrating that others trust you. That goes back to the social proof thing. Now, I'm going to give you some demonstration examples. I also covered this in the demonstration video. Again, if you haven't watched that, you got to watch that. Bankruptcy. Prove you can help them by actually helping them. By the time it's time for you to start asking for money, this person should already know that you can help them because you should have already helped them. And so because you've helped them for free, helping them for money is the next logical conclusion, and you've reduced the risk of that decision for them. So in bankruptcy, one of these very helpful demonstrations is to let someone know the rules about repossession. Hey, if your car is in your garage, Repo Man can't do anything about that. Nothing. If it's on the street, it's fair game. So if you really don't want your car repoed, you want to be able to drive it while you finish filing, keep it in the garage. Bankruptcy also, credit score. People don't know when you file a Chapter 7, your credit score improves. They think a bankruptcy hurts your score. It's the total opposite. Well, this is really helpful information most people don't have about bankruptcy. The domino example, yeah, definitely go watch the video I made on demonstrations. In annuities, you can share stock market math. These are all examples of demonstrating that you're helpful, that you have expertise, and that you care, right? So stock market math, you should probably go watch the video that I made on annuities, because I went really deep on that one. And then the annuity triangle. So in construction, they say you can have it good, you can have it fast, you can have it cheap. You can have any two of those, but never all three. Doesn't exist. Looking for a unicorn. Good and fast, hey, it's not going to be cheap. Fast and good, also same thing, not in cheap. Cheap and fast, it can either be good, and then whatever the third variation is. Now, the way it works in annuities is you can get a rate, a bonus, or income. So typically, hey, you want a great bonus, you're not going to get a lot on the income. You want great income, you're not going to get a lot on the bonus. So there's the annuity triangle. And then you might share with them why rates aren't always number one. So demonstration, like I keep saying, definitely go watch the video I made on demonstration. It's so thorough, and there's not enough time to cover that here, but you got to understand that one of the ways that you make the lead more valuable to you versus your competitor is with a demonstration. Stories. So the I'm just like you story. I tell my story about starting a brick and mortar music school. Well, entrepreneurs like yourself, attorneys, advisors, medical professionals, consultants, coaches, anybody running their own business, not only do I tell the story that I'm like you, I really am like you. I mean, I at 25, took my life savings, which wasn't much, but it was all I had, put it all on the line, got a brick and mortar business, knocked on doors, cold called, hung out on the side of the road with a sign, bought advertising. And I tell that story to establish similarity and affinity. I care. All right, I'm care. Yeah, I do good at typos sometimes. So I had a Great Dane for about 11 years. Here's the point of me telling you this story. If I said to you, oh, I'm a mushy-hearted guy, or I really have a giant heart for other people, you may or may not believe me. You might say some BS. You might think that was, maybe you did believe it, maybe you didn't. Doesn't matter. If I really want you to know it, to understand it, to feel it, to know its truth, I would tell you the story. And I'll summarize it. But I had a Great Dane for about 11 years. Every day for 11 years, when she was as happy as possible after running or eating food, I'd pick up her ear and I'd whisper in the highest pitched voice I could, I love you, right? I love you, Abby. That's what I'd say. So I decided to do that the night that I got her because I knew that one day I'd be there when she went. And so I just knew that I wanted her last moment to be just like all of her greatest moments ever. And so for 11 years, every single day, I classically conditioned her with that phrase. So the last thing she would hear and feel is the peak joy and moments in her life. I get sort of worked up talking about it. I mean, it's a true story. It was one of the hardest things I ever did. And now I think you understand how I really feel versus me just telling him I'm a mushy-hearted guy. So the story demonstrates that. Okay, I'm a good person. All right. So there's this really funny bit. Is it Russell Brand? Yeah, he does a comedy bit and he shows his charity stuff. And then at the end, he's like, not gonna lie, just did that one to make me look good, something like that. Which is kind of funny, but look, if you're gonna take the time to tell a story, you should be telling your positive qualities, right? So I'm a good person. Do you believe me? Who knows, right? You tell me you're a good person. Do I believe it? I have no idea. But when I tell you the story, you'll understand. I have O negative blood. So 4 times a year, I go to the Colorado Children's Hospital and I donate blood. Now, I also have asthma. I also have sleep apnea. And until I got surgery, I had an obstructed airway and I live at altitude. So I got 4 things going against me on the oxygen, right? But donating O negative blood is a super big deal because, I didn't know this is really interesting. Anybody can receive O negative blood. That's why they want so much of it, so that if they don't know someone's blood type, they can just pick up a bag of O negative and they can save someone's life. Now, that's pretty cool. But flip side of that, O negative blood, while we're the universal donor, we are singular receivers. We can only receive O negative blood. So if there's a kid in a car wreck who has O negative blood, the only kind of blood that can save that kid's life is O negative. Only 7% of people have O negative blood. And that means that if people with O negative blood don't donate, then people with O negative blood that need it and don't have it die, literally die. So every time I donate, I am exhausted. I'm basically on the couch for 2 or 3 days. I don't drink, I don't lift. Sometimes I take off work. I'm just drained, right? Literally drained. Okay, well, at the same time, every day that I donate, they say to me, you just saved 4 to 5 kids' lives today. And you can't imagine that feeling. It's just, I mean, there's just something. I might do the whole thing just to hear that, you know? I swear I can feel my cape flapping in the wind on the way to the car. Like it's such a great feeling. And now I'm telling you that if you don't know your blood type, you should find out. And you should, if you have O negative, you should go donate for sure, 100%. All right. How about this others trust me thing? So actually, this is a great thing to know. I just finished a call with a bankruptcy attorney, and her question was, "Well, can I see some of the other people that you're working with?" It's like, "Yeah, that's what the screen share is for. Like, look, it's right here." So people want to know that others trust you. That's a great thing to tell a story about. Now, having shared with you the 2 things that determine lead quality, which is a demonstration or a story, which all leads to the lead psychology, I'm going to share with you now the only 3 ways to deliver those messages. 3 ways. All right. Number 1 is one-to-one. You're sitting, what do they say in sales training? Eye to eye, belly to belly, knee to knee, foot to foot, whatever, at the kitchen table, looking right at them. That's one way. It is the least scalable way. It's actually the highest leverage way in that particular dimension of just one-to-one. Like if you and I were sitting at a table and I plugged in a VCR and had you watch a video, that'd be less effective than you and I just talking, right? So it's the most effective way, one-to-one. However, it doesn't scale very well. It literally doesn't scale. It has a time constraint, a hard constraint on time. The next way to do it is one-to-many. So this would be in like a seminar or a webinar. Financial advisors love seminars for all kinds of reasons. One of them is that you get to demonstrate authority, trustability, the like, no trust, trifecta, and tell stories and all that stuff to a group of people all at once. You've established authority, expertise. It does all the things we just talked about, actually. It's one of the reasons they like seminars so much is because it knocks all that out in one fell swoop. Seminars, webinars, also video like this. This is a video. You're watching this, so are like potentially thousands of other people right now, depending on how much I spend to promote it. And the next thing is by media. So more specifically, automated media like marketing automation. So you can use an email to send out a video, a text message to send out a video. You can use advertising to send out a video. And I like media, but media also includes people. Real quick, I'm actually going to do a whole series on the wealth creation for entrepreneurs, wealth creation for advisors and attorneys. And the key point of wealth creation, the big idea is understanding constraint theory. Spark Notes, your number 1 constraint at all times is time. Caveat, it's actually energy, not time, but most people think of it as time. And the definition of media actually means, it's median, means in between, right? Media is the root word of median. I learned this when I was playing soccer. My Mexican teammates they'd yell out media, right? Which means middle, right? So I learned real quick that meant middle. Media, by definition, is anything between you and your prospect. So if that's a video, the video is media. If you're a salesperson, you're non-attorney salesperson, or your junior advisor, or whoever you have working with you, is between you and your prospect, that makes that person media, right? So media can be object media or person-based media. Now, when you show all of these demonstrations and stories to all of your leads, this is what you're going to get. This is really, really cool. You get a higher show-up rate. You get easier conversations because they already like, know, and trust you. You get automatic trust. That's what leads to the easier conversations. You actually get a shorter sales cycle because there's less distrust, there's less friction or resistance. You get fewer objections because if you do it right, those objections will just go away. You can block those objections. You get warmer and kinder calls, and wouldn't we all like that, to not feel like you're a commodity and that they're just going to call the next person and just pick off of a list, right? You get warmer and kinder calls, and you get stronger bonding. An example of this, I told a story about my grandmother. And in fact, if you've ever scheduled a call with me, you may have seen this story, including the Abby story. And I was on a call with a guy, Orlando, and man, the first thing he said was how much he loved that story and how he felt the exact same way about his grandmother, right? So like we were able to bond, and it was the first 5 minutes I'd ever spoken with him, right? So that story created that affinity and that trust and that likability automatically. We were talking about that briefly. I also told a story. I was giving a testimonial one time for this guy, Carlos, another copywriter. And the story is about me in Tulsa. And like, 7, 8 days later after that, Carlos sent me a message on Facebook. He was like, "Oh my gosh, best testimonial ever. I just signed up like a high ticket client for him. It was like 8 or 10 grand in coaching." And I was like, "Great." He's like, "But the reason is that kid saw the video and he heard your story about being a kid in Tulsa in 1992. And he was like, there's no way that's a coincidence. I have to work with this guy." So stories can create that kind of bond, and there's an art and a science to using a device which is broad enough to relate to as many people as possible, or using a bonding device which is narrow enough to meet with to bond with a far smaller group of people, but that bond becomes stronger. You're going to get a higher sales rate. All right. So the more people you talk to, the more you sell, right? But what if you can talk to the same amount of people and sell more at the same time? That's a high piece of leverage, piece of high leverage. Decreased price resistance. I mean, rate shopping, price sensitivity goes down. And by and large, you end up with much easier client relationships. Who doesn't want to work with someone that they like, right? Who wants to work with someone that they don't like? Well, just by telling a story that makes you likable, by demonstrating and illustrating a good part of your character, maybe they would or wouldn't have liked or disliked you, but they're definitely going to like you more now, right? So it always helps. And in doing all of the above, you actually end up getting more referrals more easily. Now, all told, let's put it all together. All told, you're getting cheaper leads who buy in higher proportions at higher prices, faster and easier, and they're more likely to refer to, and that, by the way, is the secret to doubling your ROAS. It's called a client multiplication system. If you can take one client and turn it into two with no increase in cost, you've doubled your return on ad spend, right? So that's one of by the way, it's a very high piece of leverage. It's a piece of very high leverage. All right. So someone once said, and countless men and women have repeated, the devil's in the details. Hey, well, I think that's kind of cynical. I've been saying this for a long time. The dollars are in the details. That's my belief, because it's just as true, right? It's just as true. In fact, it's the attention to detail that typically separates great from best. And I'm fortunate. I was actually saying this for a long time, and then I heard someone say the angels are in the details. That was J.K. Rowling. Joanne Rowling is actually the correct pronunciation of her name. The angels are in the details, she said. And I thought, man, I must be in good company if we think the same way about that phrase. Well, the whole point of that is that the leverage is in the little things. You've heard the phrase tiny hinges swing big doors. And if you hadn't, it's a good time that you heard it. The leverage is in the little things. And I'm going to illustrate for you what this can do for you. Now, I've given you a lot of the soft science, lead psychology, lead quality, storytelling, demonstrations, broad strokes, big ideas. Let's take that. Let's give it concrete form. Let's make it quantifiable. Let's make it measurable, and therefore improvable. Let's improve results first by quantifying and measuring, and then doing some comparisons. So this is a basic example. I've just said, let's say $10,000 in ad spend. Let's say you spend 120 grand a year in ads, and that's $10,000 in ad spend. So 10 grand a month. I've done this more than once. I'm giving you a ballpark, easy math. This may or may not, the impression count may or may not be accurate. I'm just going to say it's 100,000 impressions in advertising for that $10,000. Your actual cost per impression depends on the market, the geography, the competition, way beyond this video. So the amount of clicks, leads, meetings, sales, referrals, and revenue that you get doesn't change the cost of your advertising. Cost is the same. But we spend 10 grand and we get 100,000 impressions, cost us $10,000. And then for that 100,000 impressions, we get a 1% click-through rate. So the 10,000 stays the same. We've got 1,000 clicks now, and it costs us $10 a click, which depending on your market could be about right. And then we have a 25% conversion rate from leads to meeting. All right, so we've got 50 meetings, or pardon, a 20% conversion rate from clicks to leads. So 20% of leads become, or 20% of clicks become leads. That's 200 leads. Same $10,000 divided by 200 is $50 a lead. Then we have a 25% conversion rate from leads to meetings. So 25% of 200 is 50. Same $10,000. 10,000 divided by 50 is $200 cost per meeting. Let's say that you close 1 in 5 people that you speak with. You've done such a great job that 1 in 5 sign up. So you have a 20% conversion rate. 20% of 50 is 10 sales. That's $1,000 per sale, because at $10,000 ads, 10 sales, $1,000 a sale. Now let's say that you have about a 20% sale to referral rate, which for some people might be generous, who knows? So of those 10 sales, you get 2 more sales by a 20% referral rate, and that's about $5,000 per referral. Now, let's say your average sale, and I'm actually using bankruptcy pricing here for the record. For some advisors, it's gonna be way, way more. For some attorneys, it'll be more or less. It just kind of depends. But 3,500 is a pretty middle of the road professional services price. So you got 12 sales, 10 sales plus 2 referrals, 12 of those at $3,500. You got $42,000 in revenue. Your gross return on ad spend, is 10,000. It's actually 42,000 divided by 10,000, so you get 4.2. So you put in $1, you get $4.2 out. Hey, you're beating the stock market all day, every day. Sure, you got overhead, you got labor, all that stuff. But any machine I can put $1 into and get $4 out of, I'm gonna put all the money that I have in. Now, this is when you have a system that's working without everything I just shared with you, without stories, without demonstration, with none of the psychology that I just mentioned. This is how most successful people are in business already, right? Now, fat thumb rule, it used to be if you couldn't 8x your gross return on ad spend, then you couldn't run an infomercial. Basically, if you couldn't sell it for 8 times what it cost you, including the cost of the ads and the product, then you couldn't really scale that product and make money. These days, that number, I've heard 8, I've heard 10, I've heard 12. I've gone as high as 130 something in my own campaigns. The highest I've heard a client was like 64 or 76. A lot of businesses land at 10 gross, but there are tons of businesses that are at 2.5 and 3x gross that make millions and millions and millions of dollars. In fact, the higher the total absolute revenue number, so like 5 million versus 50,000, the higher that top number, 5 million, the lower this return on multiple comes. That's beyond scope of this video. But let's assume that you implement everything I just said, stories and demonstration, all the ways I just described. And again, the dollars are in the details. The leverage is in the little things. So if you compare the conversion rate from here to here, you'll see it's not that different. Now, I've taken clicks from 1% to 2%, so 1% difference, right? Leads from a 20% conversion rate to 25% conversion rate, it's just another 5%. Meetings from 25% to a 30%, again, another 5%. Sales from 20% to another 30%, sorry, that's actually another 10%. And from sales from 20% to 30%, and the referrals, I actually doubled from 20 to 40%. These are all perfectly reasonable outcomes if you do this right, if you do a good job with the lead psychology before they sit down with you. And the lead psychology is all about how they feel about you before the meeting, right? That's the key part, is before the meeting. So if you do that, you'll see your cost per lead's cut in half, your cost per click is cut in half, your cost per lead is less than half, your cost per meeting is almost 25%, your cost per sale is almost 1/5, all right? And then your cost per referral is about, I don't know, 1/7. All told, for the same so the same $10,000 in ad spend, same amount of impressions for the clicks and all the funnel metrics there, you get a total of 63 sales for the same $10,000. That's 45 base sales and then 18 referrals at the same $3,500. And now you're looking at a revenue of $220,500 on the same $10,000 in ad spend. You might think to yourself, this seems a little too good to be true. Well, I challenge you to try it out. I challenge you to test it. Tell me I'm wrong. Now, are your numbers going to actually be this exact increase? Obviously not. Are they going to be more? 100%. 100%. Does gravity work? Yes. These psychological tools that I just shared with you, done correctly, are effective every single time. Why? Because everybody's brain works fundamentally the same way. And if you apply this to a large enough group of people, you have a statistically reliable increase in conversion rates. So if you're looking at just the numbers, you might think to yourself, well, surely, these are just the numbers, right? Yeah, but numbers are actually lagging indicators. Numbers are the outputs of a system. The leading indicator is your own checklist of, did I do a demonstration? Was it a good one? Did I do a story? What was it about? Did I make sure that my prospects saw that before the meeting? Those are the leading indicators, and these numbers, being the lagging indicators, only show you the result of the output of the system. It doesn't tell you what was actually in the system. So if you looked at these side by side, you wouldn't know what the difference is. And the difference is, by the way, everything I just shared with you. So If you do that, in this example, you're looking at a gross ROAS of 22.05 divided by 4.2, and that is how you 5.2x your top line. So if you're doing $100,000 in business right now, everything I just shared with you can take you to $500,000 in business by the time you implement all of it. By the way, it's pretty darn easy to do too. So basically, this is one of the easiest ways in the world to 5x your existing business. I've tested these things top to bottom, left to right, east to west, sun up, sun down. And then I tested that the sun actually rose in the east. And then I tested that test. Every time I've implemented one of these things, we've seen a bump in response, a decrease in cost, or an increase in revenue. This is one of the easiest ways in the world to 5x your business. All right. Now, if you're actually 5xing what you have now, maybe it's 3xing, maybe you have a constraint somewhere else like market size, maybe you live in a small geography. So this is the best way in the world to get the most out of your existing business. All right. And when you do this through media by automation or by labor, you can get these results by building it once and letting it work for you for the rest of your career. That's actually what I do. All of my stories and demonstrations are through automated or one-to-many media. This video, one-to-many media. If you were to book a call with myself or my team, you would get automated emails sharing those stories. So you build it once and you get all that output, all that extra juice just for one squeeze, right? It'd be like if you did one push-up and then it's like you did 10 push-ups for the rest of your life and you just were super buff, but you only had to do it once. That'd be super cool. So isn't that something worth doing, everything you just saw? Even if you only doubled instead of 5x your gross ROAS. Wouldn't that be worth doing? So look, if you found this helpful, go ahead and say so in the comments. And wherever you're experiencing this, video, audio, written form, just leave a comment saying you found it helpful. And be sure to check out more episodes like this. My name is Sterling Van Gogh. Thank you for listening, watching, and reading the Van Gogh Wealth Show. We'll see you next time.